Hey guys, welcome to this week's video, and in this week's video I am going to discuss what I think is the worst spell in D&D. So a few weeks ago I made a video on what I think are the most broken spells in D&D. I will have that linked here in the video now. But in this video I'm going to talk about the opposite and what I feel is the worst spell in D&D. Now there are a lot of spells in D&D that are objectively just a little bit weaker than the vast majority, but this one in particular I feel just takes the cake at being the worst spell in the game. And for those who are familiar with D&D 5e, I'd be surprised if people don't agree with me with this, but I feel the worst spell in the game is True Strike. So True Strike can be found on page 284 of the player's handbook. It is a divination cantrip. It has a casting time of 1 action, a range of 30 feet. It only has semantic components. Its duration is a concentration up to 1 round, and the spell reads as follows. You extend your hand and point a finger at a target in range. Your magic grants you a brief insight into the target's defenses. On your next turn, you gain advantage on your first attack roll against the target, provided that this spell hasn't ended. So, at first glance, it seems like it's going to be a pretty powerful spell, giving yourself advantage. But when you start to take into the other aspects of the spell and its opportunity cost, the cantrip drastically falls off of being useful. And so what I mean by its opportunity cost is that the spell essentially is you are giving up making 2 attacks versus having advantage on just 1 attack. So that's what I mean by the opportunity cost, if that makes sense. So if you imagine that initiative has started and you attack on your turn, cast Firebolt, yay, right? And then on your next turn, you cast a Firebolt. If both attacks hit, you'll do 2d10 fire damage. But if you say on your first round of combat, you cast True Strike on the target that's within 30 feet of you, on your next attack round, if you still have concentration on the spell, and the target is still alive, you can make that attack roll with advantage and potentially do 1d10 damage. So you're essentially giving up an attack to make one with advantage. Now let's look at the comparisons of this. 2 attacks deal more damage than 1, and the odds of rolling a crit on one of those 2 attacks is basically the same as trying to get a crit with rolling with advantage, except that if you get 2 crits in a row, that'll be 4d10 fire damage on a firebolt, whereas if you only get the crit with the advantage, you're only doing 2d10. So you're essentially the potential of having the damage that you could be doing over 2 rounds and just making it the equivalent of doing damage once, just for the sole purpose of having advantage. Furthermore, the opportunity cost for casting True Strike is really, really steep. There's a few things that could go wrong. Well, 3 big things that could go wrong before your next turn even comes around and you get to take advantage of that advantage attack. You might lose concentration, thus wasting your action from your turn. An ally might actually kill the target that you've cast the cantrip on, therefore it just goes completely to waste. Or worst case scenario, even with advantage, you still miss the attack. The negatives are heavily outweigh the positives of this cantrip, and honestly, unless you have some way of either casting this for free or a bonus action, I just would not take it. And it only applies to your first attack, so even if you're a fighter that some way gets this as a bonus action, you only get it for 1 attack. You don't even get it for all your attacks on your turn. And so I feel there are just better options for spellcasters or potential martial players who do get access to this spell somehow. There's just better options for you to take out there. I personally would always go for the 2 attacks versus the 1 with advantage, just because your potential damage is double than what it is if you cast True Strike. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, surely there are some good instances where this spell actually works, and to be honest, I could only think of 2. The first one is if you are at disadvantage. You cast True Strike to cancel out the disadvantage and just have a regular attack. Now, this is pretty situational, and even then, I personally still think I'd probably just go with the disadvantage over wasting the action to just cancel out, because there are so many ways to stop having disadvantage that it just, once again, I feel you're wasting your action by trying to cancel out the disadvantage with the advantage granted by True Strike. And the other one is if you're truly desperate and more or less want a guarantee to hit. Now, obviously, you're not guaranteed. It's only advantage. It only increases your odds slightly of hitting, but sometimes you need that slight bonus to be able to hit. And that would be, I suppose, one of the big benefits of True Strike, is that you're nearly guaranteeing yourself to hit. But once again, it's not really a guarantee. So, like, when you only have two instances where the spell isn't even like being used to its maximum potential, but rather a little bit of help or to stop something, a bad thing like your disadvantage happening, I feel, once again, the negatives outweigh the positives. The cost of the spell is too much. You're giving up too much to cast it, and who doesn't like having two attacks? Why would you give up two attacks for one attack where you just roll the same amount of dice but potentially less damage? I don't know. I can't see a reason anyone would ever take True Strike. As a DM, I would never advise a player to take it. As a player, I'd never advise another player to take it. There are better options out there, and like, you've got to bear in mind even the cost of spellcasters only get a certain amount of cantrips. I think at most they might get 6. I think some classes get less, and you'd be giving up one of those valuable slots for True Strike when you could take something that would be a far more useful. Usually when I'm doing cantrips, say you've got 5, I usually take 2 damaging ones, a melee one, a range one, 2 support ones, so something maybe like guidance or mage hand, and then I tend to take one for like flavor, which would be like prestidigitation or thaumaturgy or something like that, just to get a good variety in there. But I don't see where True Strike can fit into a cantrip selection, because it's just, everything else is just so much better. It really is the worst spell in D&D 5e, and I honestly don't know what they were thinking. Even if you got rid of the concentration, like, I feel making it a bonus action might be okay, but then again, it kind of becomes too powerful because you can just give yourself infinite advantage on attacks. So I don't know what you do with a cantrip like this. It's too bad to be useful, but then if you even change it slightly, it becomes too powerful. So it's just in that weird scenario where you're just better off making it worse, as opposed to, or keeping it bad, as opposed to just making it too OP. I'd love to know what other people's thoughts are on True Strike. If you completely disagree with me, I would love for you to say so in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your justification as to why you think True Strike isn't the worst spell in D&D. If you completely agree with me, also say so in the comment section below. I want to know if people think I'm right in this scenario or not. Either way, if you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like, and if you want more content like this, hit the subscriber button and make sure you turn notifications on so that way you absolutely never miss a video. I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope you have an amazing weekend of D&D sessions, and I'll catch you all in the next one, guys. Bye.